Something weird is happening with Gen Z. The most connected generation in human history is starting to put down their phones, not because someone told them to, not because of a digital detox trend, because they're genuinely curious about what happens when they just stop, and what's happening inside their brains when they do. Science didn't expect this. Think about what boredom actually is for a second, not the feeling. The function. Your brain, when it has nothing to process, doesn't shut down. It activates something called the default mode network, a system that only switches on when you stop feeding it input. This is where your brain connects dots it couldn't connect before, where memories get organized, where your sense of self gets rebuilt, where creativity doesn't just visit, it lives. But here's the problem. Gen Z never got to be bored. Not really. Picture this. You're 12 years old. You're sitting in the back seat of a car. There's no phone in your hand, no screen, no playlist, no notification, just a window and a moving road. What happens in your head? For most of Gen Z, that scenario has almost never existed. By the time they were old enough to remember, there was always something, always a video, always a sound. Always a scroll. The average Gen Z brain has been in input mode for so long, it forgot output mode was even an option. And the science on this is genuinely alarming. A study from the University of Virginia found that people would rather give themselves mild electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's how uncomfortable the absence of stimulation has become. Researchers call this cognitive restlessness. Your brain starts treating silence like a threat, like something is wrong if nothing is happening. And when your brain is always in threat mode, it can't do the deep work. It can't create. It can't heal. It can't actually think. But something is shifting. And Gen Z is leading it. Search boredom on TikTok right now and you won't just find complaints. You'll find something unexpected. People sitting in silence and filming it. People talking about their first experience of doing nothing. People describing it like they discovered a new country inside themselves. There's a growing movement. Some call it raw dogging reality. No headphones, no phone, just existing in a space without content. And the people doing it? They're not reporting boredom, they're reporting clarity. Here's what's actually happening in their brains. When you remove constant stimulation, dopamine receptors begin to reset. Your baseline for what feels interesting starts to lower. Suddenly, a conversation feels rich. A walk feels like an event. A thought feels worth following. Neuroscientists call this dopamine recalibration, and it doesn't take months. Research shows measurable changes in attention, and mood regulation can begin in as little as 3 to 4 days of reduced stimulation. 3 days. That's how fast your brain starts to come back to itself. And the creativity piece is even more fascinating. A study published in the journal Creativity Research found that participants who spent time doing boring, repetitive tasks before a creative challenge outperformed those who jumped straight in. The bored brain doesn't go quiet. It goes searching. It starts making connections between ideas that have nothing obvious in common. This is called associative thinking, and it's the same mental state that produces breakthroughs. Einstein described it. Darwin relied on it, and Gen Z is accidentally rediscovering it by putting their phones face down. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Boredom also does something to your identity. When there's always something external to react to, you never have to ask who you actually are. You just respond. You scroll. You perform. But in silence, that question surfaces. What do I actually think about this? What do I actually want? Who am I when nobody's watching? For a generation that has been chronically watched performing for followers, for parents, for algorithms that question, can feel terrifying at first, and then quietly. Like something loosening in your chest, it starts to feel like freedom. This doesn't mean Gen Z is abandoning technology. They're not becoming monks. but something has changed in how they're relating to it. A 2024 survey found that 58% of Gen Z respondents said they were intentionally building no-phone rituals into their daily routines. Morning walks without earbuds, meals without screens, commutes without content, not as punishment, as something they actually look forward to. Because here's what boredom actually gives you that no app ever can. It gives you yourself back. The version of you that isn't reacting. The version that isn't performing. The version that has thoughts nobody asked for. And that version, that's the one that knows what it actually wants. That's the one that makes things instead of just consuming them. That's the one that, according to every creativity researcher who has studied this, produces the most original thinking of your life. So if you've been feeling the pull lately, the urge to just sit somewhere, to not fill the silence, to let your mind wander without a destination, that's not laziness. That's your brain asking for something it genuinely needs, and the most digitally native generation in history is starting to listen. Maybe it's time you did too. If this made you think about your own relationship with boredom, subscribe. Because the next video goes even deeper into how your brain is being quietly rewired every single day.